Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through complex sources to bring you the essential takeaways, basically giving you that shortcut to being genuinely informed. Today, we're looking at a philosophy of achievement that was actually kept under wraps for decades. It was seen as too dangerous. We're diving into Napoleon Hill's legendary manuscript, Outwitting the Devil. He wrote it back in 1938, but it wasn't published for, 72 years?
Yeah, 72 years. And you can see why when you read it, this deep dive is, well, pretty necessary because the whole book is structured as this really intense, kind of shocking interview with the devil himself.
Right, the devil explaining why people fail.
Exactly. He gets specific, tactical even, about why, according to Hill, something like 98% of people don't achieve what they want in life. And Hill, through this devil character, he really doesn't hold back. He levels some sharp criticism at big institutions, schools, churches, even politics.
Saying they actually help create failure, often without realizing it.
Precisely. So, our mission for you today is pretty straightforward. We want to pull out the core ideas, the mechanics of Hill's philosophy. This is the blueprint he built after talking to, 500 major successes of his era.
Like Ford, Edison, those types.
Right. And he balanced that by also studying, get this, 25,000 people who called themselves failures. He wanted to understand both sides.
So the goal here is really to learn the causes of failure, so you, the listener, can better map out your own path to success. It's about avoiding the pitfalls.
And the whole massive project. It all started with Andrew Carnegie back in 1908. Carnegie basically threw down this huge challenge to Hill.
Yeah, organize a practical philosophy of achievement. Simple, right?
Hardly. And Carnegie's terms were, well, they were tough. He told Hill, look, this is probably going to take you at least 20 years, continuous effort.
And zero pay up front.
Zero pay, no profit guaranteed. But Hill, amazingly, took the deal. He dedicated decades to figuring this out.
So what was the core answer he came up with after all that work?
The central idea, the thesis, boils down to this quote Hill uses. Fear is the tool of a man-made devil. But then the flip side is, self-confident faith in oneself is the man-made tool which builds a triumphant life.
Okay, so it's an internal battle, fear versus faith. Our biggest obstacles are basically in our own heads.
That's the core of it. But what makes this really fascinating and honestly more relatable is that Hill himself really struggled. Even knowing all these principles, he had a hard time applying them consistently in his own life.
He talks about drifting, right, even though he knew how bad it was.
Exactly. He knew his own 17 principles inside and out, supposedly. Yet he couldn't seem to settle down. He'd build something profitable, make good career moves.
Like that Golden Rule magazine, that was doing really well.
Yeah, hugely profitable. And then later the Betsy Ross Candy Company, but he'd just leave. He described it as getting fidgety inside. He actually wrote, "No amount of money would ever make me happy." He had success, but lacked real direction, that sense of personal fulfillment.
Just drifting along despite knowing better.
And that drifting hit rock bottom in late 1923. He found himself completely broke, stranded somewhere, and just paralyzed. He called it the worst of all human ailments, indecision.
Wow. So it took a major crisis.
It did. That emergency, that absolute low point, forced him to finally connect with what Carnegie had called his other self. It was the wake-up call he needed.
So this other self, what exactly is it? Is it like a sudden insight or something more?
Hill describes it more like an awakening, a kind of command from within that pushed him to finally finish the philosophy he'd been working on for so long. He defines the other self as a sort of faith entity.
A faith entity, okay.
Yeah, something inside you that can intelligently guide you towards what you want, but, and this is crucial, he stresses, it will not do your work for you.
Ah, so it's not magic. It needs fuel.
Right. It acts like a compass, but only if you are crystal clear about your most pronounced desire. It demands what he hammers home again and again. Definiteness of purpose.
Okay, so find your purpose. Connect with this other self. But the book immediately throws a wrench in that, right?
Yeah.
This interview with the devil, he claims he's already got most people locked down.
That's the chilling premise. The devil basically says, yeah, I control 98% of people on Earth.
98%? How?
Through terrifying simplicity, according to Hill's devil. He says he doesn't need complicated tricks. He just moves in and occupies the unused space of the human brain.
Unused space.
Like a vacuum.
Exactly. A mental vacuum?
Yeah.
And in that space, he plants seeds of negative thinking, fear, doubt.
And his number one tool for getting into that space, you mentioned it before, drifting.
That's the big one. Drifting, for Hill, is basically letting yourself be pushed around by circumstances, by things outside your own mind. Instead of choosing your direction, you just float.
So drifters don't really know what they want. Pretty much. Hill has this great line. A drifter don't know what he wants from life and spends all of his time getting just that, which is nothing, or just whatever happens to come along. It's inaction leading to failure. Hill even gives a formula for it.
Right, I saw that. Laziness plus indifference,
Equals procrastination.
which equals drifting. Start.
Very. And closely linked to drifting is the devil's other main weapon, fear. He lays out 6 specific types he uses most effectively.
Okay, what are they? I remember poverty and death were big ones.
Yeah, those are the top 2 he emphasizes, but the full list is fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of losing love, fear of old age, and fear of death.
But poverty and death are the heavy hitters.
That's what the devil character claims. Those are the primary levers used to create the anxiety and indecision that lead to drifting. Makes sense, given the era's economic hardships and, well, universal fear of mortality.
What's really sneaky, though, is what he says about fear itself. It doesn't even have to be real fear, right?
Exactly. That's a key insight. The devil admits, fear of the thing which does not exist is just as useful to me as fear of that which does exist. It doesn't matter if the monster under the bed is real or imagined.
If the fear stops you from getting out of bed, he wins.
Precisely. If the thought occupies that unused space, causes indecision, and keeps you drifting, the devil doesn't care about its basis in reality.
Okay, now this is where it gets really controversial. The stuff that likely kept the book unpublished for so long. The devil claims he gets help. Unknowing help.
Yeah, from some surprising sources, schools, parents, even religious leaders, he claims they inadvertently help him create these drifters.
How so? Let's start with religion. That sounds explosive for 1938.
It was. Hill, through the devil, argues that some religious instruction helps by scaring children, focusing on hell, damnation, eternal punishment, the alleged purpose, to break down their willingness to think independently.
Making them more reliant on external authority or dogma, less likely to form their own definite purpose.
That's Hill's argument. It's about conditioning obedience through fear, which makes people susceptible to drifting later.
Okay, that's a heavy critique. What about schools? How do they supposedly help the devil?
Well, the devil character essentially boasts that schools teach kids almost everything except how to use their own minds and think independently.
Ouch. So focusing on memorization over thinking.
Right. Rote learning, accumulating credits, following the syllabus, but not necessarily developing critical thinking, problem solving, or, crucially, learning by doing. Hill actually envisioned a radically different system where students take the lead, learn through practical projects, freeing their minds to think for themselves instead of just absorbing facts.
So the environment school, maybe even home or church, can accidentally condition you for drifting. It sounds like a trap you can't escape.
It can feel that way, but Hill says there's a mechanism that makes this conditioning permanent. It's called the law of hypnotic rhythm.
Hypnotic rhythm. Sounds a bit mystical.
It does, but Hill ties it to something more established. Emerson's law of compensation. Basically, you reap what you sow, but applied to your mental habits.
Okay, so how does this rhythm work? How does a habit become hypnotic?
Think of it like wearing a path in the grass or a groove on a vinyl record. Any thought you have repeatedly, especially if it's mixed with strong emotion or any physical action you do over and over.
Like worrying about money constantly or always procrastinating on a task.
Exactly. If you repeat it enough, it stops being a conscious choice. It becomes automatic. Hill says at that point, nature takes it over and makes it permanent. It becomes a fixed habit, a rhythm your mind and body follow almost involuntarily.
That's kind of terrifying. It means your dominant thoughts literally shape your reality over time, whether they're good or bad.
That's precisely the implication for you, the listener. Hypnotic rhythm basically forces your mind to attract circumstances that harmonize with its dominant state. If you're constantly tuned into the frequency of poverty and fear,
You'd attract more of it.
the rhythm pulls it in. But if your mind consistently, persistently demands success, abundance, health, and that demand is backed by definiteness of purpose and action.
The rhythm works in your favor, attracting the equivalent.
Hill presents this as an unwavering, immutable law of nature. Your thoughts, repeated over time, become magnets.
Okay, so that's the mechanism of the trap.
Yeah.
But there must be an antidote, right? The devil can't win all the time if he'll figure this out.
Absolutely. And the antidote is clear. The devil himself admits he's powerless against certain people. He cannot exist, cannot gain control in the minds of those who think accurately, who have mastered their fears and who refuse to drift.
So the power is ultimately ours. It lies within the listener's control.
Entirely. Which leads us to Hill's solutions, his 7 principles for taking back control and achieving mastery. And the absolute foundation, the starting point for everything, is principle 1, definiteness of purpose.
We keep coming back to that. It's not just having a goal, is it? It's more intense.
Much more. Hill says this must be adopted as a core policy for your entire life. He even calls it the only kind of prayer you can truly rely on. Not just wishing, but a definite purpose, persistently pursued.
Written down, clear, emotionalized.
Yes. A burning desire, not a vague hope. That's the bedrock.
Okay, definiteness of purpose first. What comes next?
Principle 2, self-mastery. You need to gain control over yourself, specifically starting with what Hill calls the 3 destructive appetites. These things directly fuel drifting and mental fog.
What are the 3?
Okay. First is the appetite for food specifically, overeating or eating unhealthily. Hill links this to auto-intoxication, basically poisoning yourself, which leads to sluggish thinking, lack of energy, indecision. Hard to have a definite purpose when you feel physically lousy.
Makes sense. What's the second?
The habit of expressing loosely organized opinions. Basically, talking without knowing the facts, guessing, arguing based on hearsay. This clouds judgment and stops you from seeking actual knowledge.
So mastering what you eat and what you say. What's the third appetite?
This one's maybe the most powerful, according to Hill, the appetite for sex expression. He's very clear that if this powerful energy isn't controlled and channeled,
It leads to trouble. Drifting.
directly, reckless behavior, lack of focus, dissipation of vital energy. But, and this is the critical part, if you master this energy, if you transmute it, redirect it.
Towards your definite purpose.
Exactly. Hill claims it becomes an incredibly potent driving force. He says it sharpens the imagination, boosts creativity, builds courage, and even acts as an antidote for all fear. It's about converting raw energy into focused drive.
Interesting. So purpose, self-mastery.
Yeah.
What's principle 3?
Principle 3, learning from adversity. This is huge. Hill insists that failure is just a man-made circumstance. It's not real, not permanent until you accept it as such.
So setbacks aren't the end of the road.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Temporary defeat is just feedback. It's a signal, he says, to stop, analyze, and rearm himself with a new plan or purpose. Failure forces you to rethink.
He even calls it a blessing sometimes.
Often. A blessing in disguise because it forces you to break out of those negative thought habits, those hypnotic rhythms that weren't working anyway. It forces growth, if you let it.
Right. Adapt or stay stuck.
Okay, principle 4.
Principle 4, controlling environmental influence. This ties into his famous mastermind concept. You simply cannot escape drifting if you're constantly surrounded by negative, aimless, or fearful people. Your environment shapes your thoughts.
The mastermind. That's about forming alliances, right?
Yes, a friendly alliance of people who are harmoniously working towards a definite end, ideally one that aligns with or supports yours. It's about creating a positive mental atmosphere. Hill is really blunt here. One's intimate associates should be chosen with as much care as one chooses the food with which he feeds his body.
Wow. Choose your friends like you choose your meals. That's powerful.
It highlights the importance of who you let influence your thinking. He uses historical examples to drive this home. Think of Samuel Insull.
The guy with the massive empire. $4 billion back then. Yeah. Huge. But Hill argues he lost it not just because of the Great Depression, but because he started drifting. He got caught up in vanity, flattery, distractions like funding grand opera instead of focusing on his core business. His environment, his lack of focus, poisoned his success.
And he contrasts Insull with
Henry Ford. Ford weathered the same depression, came out without a scratch, according to Hill. Why? Because Ford had an incredibly definite purpose and the habit of refusing to drift or let negative influences take root. His success was a result of disciplined thinking, maintained rhythm.
So these principles aren't just theory, they have real-world consequences.
That's Hill's core message. Success and failure aren't random. They are the predictable results of these day-to-day evolutionary forces. Your dominant thoughts, charged with emotion, repeated over time, they will become reality through that law of hypnotic rhythm.
So the final takeaway for you, the listener, seems pretty direct then. Hill concluded that fundamentally most of the difficulties in which people find themselves are of their own making.
It sounds harsh, but he saw it as empowering. Because if you're the one making the difficulties, you're also the one with the power to change them. It starts by changing your beliefs, not just wishes, but deep-seated beliefs, and then backing them up with that persistent, definite purpose and action.
The mind is like a room, isn't it? Something's going to occupy it.
That's a great way to put it. Will it be your other self, guided by purpose, or will it be the devil operating through fear and drifting in that unused space? The choice, Hill insists, is yours.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. Remember, the devil character in the book taunted Hill, saying he'd never dare publish this manuscript. Why? Fear. Fear of backlash, of crucifixion by religious leaders, educators, society.
And that prediction basically came true. The book was suppressed for 72 years, arguably because of those fears.
So if definiteness of purpose is the ultimate defense against fear and drifting, what fear might be holding you back right now? What fear of criticism or rejection or maybe just failure is keeping you from defining your own purpose and truly taking charge of that space in your mind today?